Commissioner Boldvich. Thank you for joining me today on this simple coach-to-coach interview. Do appreciate you taking the time. And what you're going to do is impart your wisdom upon us all, which is why I'm having you on. So thanks.
Anytime. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Hey, all right. So there's so much going on. I don't want to say late to the party, but I always have to think about things for a while before I react. And sometimes the things have changed again, so I'd never quite catch up. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, and why I wanted you on, because we talked a little bit about sort of Division I, Division III, and those things the last time, 2 years ago. Jeez almighty. About things that were happening that had not yet happened. So I think pretty much we've seen, right, Division I just sort of go do a lot of interesting things. And so I just want to see if there's any perspective that you might have that and how that looks for Division III. So I hope you're ready.
I think so. First, shout out for the landmark year. We always appreciate it. So Scranton Catholic, I think both were ranked in the latest men's polls, so that's good. The wild west of the NCAA is certainly crazy. There's a lot going on at the D1 level. There was breaking news today. I don't know if you saw about it. D3. Yeah, D3 men's basketball student athlete entering into a lawsuit to get their D2 year back.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. Everything seems like a legal battle. I've got stuff coming across my desk almost every week. That's to the point of how can we make this work out for a student athlete because mom and dad are looking to get legal involved.
Oh my gosh.
And it's tricky. I don't want to see parents or student athletes incurring legal bills. Certainly, that seems insane to me. But at the same time, I want to make sure. Right. To be equitable, though, I think it's hard for them to see what's going on in the D1 space, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Pavia and this, like, why can't I get a year back?" So I see that perspective, and we're always, looking to help and advise them and find the right path that works for them, but. We've seen some interesting things these last few months, and I don't think the brakes are being tapped anytime soon, unfortunately. So there's a lot of flexibility and learning constantly.
I liken it to every time you think like, okay, we've got it. Somebody else sues, and then that has to change, and it just never seems to have settled on anything. Where, like I said, I think at just some point, it's already wild west to me, and I just think at some point it's just going to be every university college is going to be able to do whatever it wants to do. And the students are going to be able to do whatever they want to do. And, we hope we can meet together at some point on a sports field or court at some point to actually play the game that we're supposed to be doing instead of all the other nonsense. But I'm just curious. The biggest one that, to me, that I think has ramifications because I think it goes beyond Division I is this whole notion of athletes as employees, and is that something that's sort of on your radar? Like, is that something that you think of, right? Like, because not that I think I'm getting legal counsel, by the way, to get me 2 years of eligibility back so I can play. But nobody's Division III. I don't think schools will pay $10 million for a student, but I think there's going to be room for that, right? Like, I hate to say that, but to get your thoughts.
Yeah, it definitely keeps me up at night because I think if student athletes are designated as employees, that has ramifications not just in D3 but D2 space as well. All small college schools and
JUCO,
NAIA, it's not just NCAA, right? So. That's very challenging, and they've already set precedent with the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, that revenue doesn't correlate between being an employee. So they've already come out and said, well, it doesn't matter if Paul plays for Scranton and men's soccer isn't a revenue generator for Scranton if we're going to say that student athletes are employees, they're employees. Where D3 and other smaller schools will get relief is perceived control of the students, and I think that's the big issue we're seeing at D1, because the students are coming and saying like, hey, I'm being told I can't major in certain things because of my practice and game schedule. I'm being told I can't take certain classes or labs because of my practice and game schedule. So therefore, like, I'm delaying graduation, or I'm not really making progress toward degree that I would like to see. Those are things we're not really seeing in the D3 space. Certainly more, majors are going to be challenging than others, right? We see that with some of our schools that have science and pre-med things and labs and trying to work with them in our scheduling. But I don't think it's common in the D3 space for students coming to that school to be told they can't do something. So I do think that helps, but I do think we're going to see more guardrails put up about what is and isn't permissive in that space, when talking to recruiting and then ultimately retaining those students.
Yeah. Is there, I'm just curious because I know, you deal with the landmark conference presidents. Because they obviously have their world is so much broader than athletics. Like, are they really in tune to this? Because they say, I hate calling things existential because everybody calls everything an existential threat, right? Like, maybe it's not existential, but it could have a meaningful impact on their college or university. And I wonder how concerned they might be about this, again, coming down to the Division III level.
Yeah, I can't speak for other conferences, and I'm not just saying that in case they listen. But we are definitely blessed at the Landmark with presidential leadership. I think we meet more often than other conferences, and they also meet in person with our athletic directors once a year to talk about big picture items, with this being one of them. Every year in February we meet. That's uncommon. Getting FaceTime with presidents, let alone other institutional presidents, is pretty special. Our vice presidents come in as well. Our athletic director reports. And just this last February for that meeting, we did all NCAA legal as our big picture, kind of broad stroke focus, right? So we had NCAA legal come and present, talk through, to your point, parallels we could see between Division I decisions and how those impact D3. And then when they got off the call, we had a big picture landmark specific discussion about what that means. Unfortunately, we did not solve all the world's problems. I was really hoping we would.
What are you doing?
I know, I'm being lazy. But to your point, I think if I'm the AD at Catholic and I'm hearing Susquehanna's president being in tune and thinking about these things and thinking about repercussions, there's some reassurances there, right? There's some reassurance that highest level leadership is engaged. The NCAA has done a good job about how smaller schools can appropriately engage with their Congress folks. They have great congressional engagement templates for us, so those that want to be more involved and email their Congress peoples about the SCORE Act or other proposed legislation, they can be as involved as they want to be. Catholics obviously in a hotbed in DC and on the Hill, and offers a unique perspective or just experience for folks to come on their campus and see how different it is, right, than some of these major colleges that are really at the crux of these issues, because it's such a small percent of college that we're talking about when we're talking about the students basically making revenue for their schools off of their, hard work and dedication. So, again, no great solution or answers to your questions, but we're talking about it. They had a conference call about a month ago. We talked about it again. We have a fantastic leader that's chair of the Division III President's Council, and Jim Troha. He's the president at Juniata. He offers great insight to those NCAA meetings. So we are pretty lucky, I think, with getting updates. Being able to talk it down, right? Those lawyers make a lot of money because they word things really confusing that I have to read 3 or 4 times to understand. But I think we're in a pretty good place with thinking about where things could go and what that would mean for our schools. Because I think ultimately everyone's in agreement that our schools need college athletics to be able to perform at the way they want to perform as higher education institutions. Student athletes comprise a huge portion of overall population, right? So while our schools aren't wholly needing them to stay open, they're certainly a big part of students and even just general campus life, right? Like having sports, having something to go,
Something to
having a game
do,
coming
right?
on,
Like,
having homecoming.
yeah,
Sports are related to homecoming,
yeah.
right? So all those things are important. Do I think we'll still be playing college sports in a few years in the small college space? Absolutely. Will that be under the NCAA umbrella? Time will certainly tell. But there are certainly models out there for other association-wide governance and leadership. I think folks like me and my peers are going to be challenged to figure it out, but we will figure it out, and want to keep seeing those opportunities available for students.
One of the things I'm a fan of Division III for is because there is this balance. We talk all the time about a student athlete, and they're both very critically important. Especially, I think it's a cornerstone to Division III, right? Like, I think we really expect our athletes to be students first, and then I'm just wondering, do you think, look at your Magic 8 Ball, and is there a do you think like that sort of ethos of Division III goes away for something a little bit more transactional, like, which would really make my skin crawl and might end the All Things Division III Soccer podcast? But I'm just curious, like that, because I see Division One. I think that's what happened to Division One. Like, it's no longer, they're not students. For all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I don't think schools across Division III can really afford that, to be paying students to voluntarily play a sport that they love and is help completing their college experience, right? I think they're going to have to get more focused on, like I said, what the cans and cannots are. And do we have to scale back to maybe attack? Like, I see what these students do. I graduated in 2008. Their experience looks a lot different than my experience. I played 2 sports, and I was not doing non-trad soccer, barely, when I was playing softball.
Right.
I wasn't doing that. There weren't mandatory lifts. We weren't watching game film. We weren't having mandatory study halls, right? So do they scale back and look at more of that approach? Maybe. But from all we're hearing from our coaches is the students want more touch points with their teammates. They want more touch points with their coaches. They want to play more games, right? And I remember that too. I remember thinking it was so silly that we had to take days off sometimes. I'm like, what do you mean? We're in it. We're cruising. I want extra batting practice. What do you mean I can't go in? Get the cage down and get some hacks in. It's challenging for them. So that'll be interesting to monitor. If anything, I think we're going to see more D1s come the way of D3. More amateurism approach. Some of those schools, you look at conferences like Patriot League. It's not Colonial anymore. Coastal.
Yeah.
Coastal, Ivy, obviously, they look a heck a lot more like D3 schools than, Michigan and Michigan State and USC. They just do, right? Aside from maybe their endowments, right? So what does that look like for them? Does push come to shove where they have to make a decision? Are we seeing more Hartfords? Are we seeing more St. Francis's, or Azusa Pacifics, right? Making that choice because they want students, on campus more focused on studies, doing this as a vocation, right? And not traveling halfway across the country to do it. I think that's another big piece of it too, and something D3 does right.
Yeah, I do think that's a great point. And that was actually going to be my next question: is because of the St. Francis of the world, like do you see Division I schools just being like, we can either compete like everybody else and throw money at kids as best we can, and quite possibly go bankrupt doing so.
Right.
Or we could just say, you know what, we're going to view this as it's part of your college experience, and if that means playing Division II or Division III, like, that becomes an option for them. So I can see that on the bottom. I hate to say the bottom end. I don't mean that in a bad way, but like the schools that aren't on TV every weekend, that you don't see, right? Like I could see them being like, this might not be, Division I might not be a place for us anymore. And I was wondering if do you see that as well?
Yeah, I mean that I've been talking about this with our leadership for about 2 years, pre St. Francis, after Hartford. When I talk about those big picture meetings, we had Dan Dutcher, who was the former deputy of Division III, came in. He was part of the search firm that did the advising on Hartford transitioning D1 to D3. He talked to our group about that. God, that would have been 2022.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Because this is their second full year, first full year.
I think, it's either first or second that they're actually eligible, right? So he talked to us about that, and as we were considering membership changes and, trying to keep our finger in the pulse of what's happening, regionally, nationally, who's going where, right? Conference shuffle. What that means for us and who we should maybe be keeping an eye on that we wouldn't have in the past, but might be having serious conversations on their campus about a transition realignment, because it's not just paying the students if that comes through. It's also just all the other stuff that goes into being D1, right? And there are certain mandates about certain levels of things you have to offer. In terms of student athlete support and care. And some of those come with a really big price tag. And we want to give our students everything, right? But sometimes it's just not feasible, with who we are as an institution. So D3 consistently does the most with the least. I've always believed that. And our all of the staff, coaches, faculty, admins are all in it for the students. And just making this a part of what they do at college, not necessarily who they are fully at college. They can wear a lot of different hats, which I think is important.
Yeah. Let me go in a little bit different direction. I'm curious, because people want to pay me a lot of money for my name, image, and likeness. I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, you look great in the screen. I wonder if they're paying you for that, right?
They're like, here's a nickel that I found on the ground. I'm just curious, like, have you seen, I've noticed a few places. I'm very familiar with Marietta's basketball program in Ohio. They have I think it's called the Twin Rivers something, where it's for NIL type money and whatnot to support the athletes. Have you seen more of that where, hey, here's something that might be a good thing for you as a athlete, like, can you get out there, get some notoriety, some publicity, and make some money on the side? Is that an increasing from your point of view?
Yes and no. I think at the heart of what NIL was always supposed to be was like, let's not hold student athletes to a firmer standard than their general student population, right? So if I want to write a book and my specialty is a sport, why can't I reference that I'm, a leader or have this great opinion because of my status as a student athlete, right? Why can't I cite that? Where like an engineering student could cite that or cite any fancy clubs or anything else that they're part of or fancy internships they've had or patents or things like that. So it was always supposed to be for work performed, right? And we've seen that diminish quite quickly in the D1 space. I think D3 is still holding pretty true. There's a lot of split in the commissioner space about the collectives and how those are run and how those are perceived, right? Like, is it just to support the program in whole? Are the students doing anything for that funding? Is it supporting things like, winter trips and tournaments? Or is it supporting cool sweatsuits and a bunch of game shoes? Like, because those are all really different things, right? And different students will say those are important, right? So they want to go somewhere where their priorities are heard and taken care of. So The landmark, not as much. Things are starting to come up. We have a lot of students. I've seen the most in the space of social media, right? And influencing like you. You're the YouTube influencer. Yep. So, I think that's great. Like, if Brooks wants to play one of our cross country runners to wear their shoes and make a few posts about how they love running in Brooks, awesome. If they want to get discounts and gear to do that, awesome. That's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
I think it gets tricky when you get more general businesses involved and it's curious like what the actual transaction is and what work is being performed. But I think our schools and our compliance offices have been really good at advising the students at what options are. And then we've really focused more on education, right? Like, are the students aware of, some that are getting scholarships that are tied to total income? Are they aware of what those income changes could be that might impact their scholarships? And for us, I don't think we have as many making the big 6-7 figure deals that we're seeing in D1, but that's a very real thing that I've seen students get caught up on. Even just the idea of filing taxes, right? Like, if you're work study and work in a few camps or part time in the summer, you fall below that threshold, right? And now all of a sudden, if you stack a few $5,000 or $10,000 deals, you're suddenly filing taxes, and that's not something we're counting on or even tracking. So I think the financial literacy, the tax implication literacy, that's really the most important and could be really good building blocks for the future. Like, I always joke, my first job out of college, I threw out my W-2s. I didn't know I needed to keep them. If I was if I had an NIL deal and maybe took some tax filing classes in college, I would have known those were important. I was going to need them. So I think there are benefits to that, but I think it's all about, trying to control and educate as best you could without the students feeling controlled. Like, they're still in control of what they want to do, but they're understanding, the steps and ramifications that come out of that.
What are you hearing about, very broadly, recruiting for coaches having to go out and recruit, and especially with all this stuff going on? I know the obvious one. I mean, the two obvious ones that come to mind that I always think of is like the transfer portal. Like, it's become a thing that it never used to be, right? Like, it is a component of your, I think, most schools' recruiting strategy. What's in the transfer portal, and is there somebody that we can pick up? And then the other one was just the Division I cutting of the revenue. I forget how that's done, how it's defined, but cutting the roster sizes and sort of the trickle down that has. I'm just wondering what you've heard from coaches about how they have to recruit now, and is it dramatically different or difficult?
Yeah, two parts for sure. Basically, Division I can pay students now. So if you're going to choose to pay students, you have to abide by the roster limits. That's all that is. So that's the cut down. That's the whole, are we opting in or opting out of house?
That's talk. It. Yeah.
Right. So everyone's opted in from like the lawsuit as a whole, right? Like, you don't get to opt into a settlement, like you're in or you're out. But the opting in is the payment piece. So the schools that opt in are going to be limited to roster sizes. And I don't even think that's finalized yet because it was being appealed and everything in court. So it's still, who knows? Like we said, those lawyers, they're milking that money, man. So we'll see. But the thought is, right, if, so I think actually it was, some are going to get grandfathered, I think was where they ended up landing on that actually. So eventually, right, we would see students that maybe would have made a D1 roster not. So what does that mean for what's next? And then I think that's a direct impact on transfer portal because the sad truth is, you have coaches out there finding that gem, right, that D1 missed on. And they make a huge impact for your program year one. And now they're saying, man, I could go get a partial scholarship at a D2, or I could go get a full scholarship at D1. I want to go in the portal and see my options. And that's a very real and challenging decision for a student to make. But I'm seeing more of that. I'm seeing more of impact first and second year players wanting to transfer because now they might not have to take out a loan to go to school, which again, huge supportive. They should have that.
Totally get
but
that.
I think there's now less emphasis on finding the gems, right? You almost kind of get burned by it. You get them for a year, they do things, and now they want to go somewhere else. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow. So you're right. Coaches are constantly working. Recruitment is a 365 job. Retention is a 365 job. I don't know how they do it. And they're getting more pressures from institutions to fill rosters out as well, to hit certain minimums that the school would like to see in regards to roster size. It is a never-ending wheel. And I think the thing we don't talk about enough with both of these instances are the impact on true freshmen. And what that means, right? Like there are fewer spots now in D1 for them. And, Dion, love-hate relationship with there, but he said it best. Why is he going to go recruit an 18-year-old when he could just stick to the portal and know Paul knows he has to go to class. Paul knows what a day in the life of a college student athlete looks like. I'm not going to risk it on an 18-year-old. I'm going to go to him directly. And you're seeing more and more of that. It's interesting. My work with hockey, it's kind of always been there, even in the D3 space, because of the prep culture there and the fifth year high school, major juniors kind of thing. So you are already getting older freshmen, first years, 20, 21-year-olds in that sport. I'm so curious to see the impact now on other sports and how few true freshmen are playing college sports in general, not just D1. We're seeing that at D3 as well.
That has me. I didn't mention that, but that has me bummed out. Like I think again, magic wand, snap of the finger, whatever. I think there should be a requirement that recruiting is dedicated to getting freshmen, right? You know what I mean? Like there should be this emphasis on how do you bring up kids to come to the college or university, and how do you form them and all that stuff. And I think using the transfer portal, knowing that I can get, hey, instead of an 18-year-old kid or 17-year-old kid, I can get a 19-year-old kid who's knows it physically more. You're almost like shortchanging the process, right? Like you're wiring it so that, hey, I can be competitive tomorrow if I get the right number of transfers. So if that's the case, why not just make it a transient thing? Like every year I'm just going to hit the portal. I'm going to try to get my 10 guys or whatever the number is. And you do that every year. I just really, that breaks my heart for
Same. And I think it might have to start at a re-education in the recruiting process. I wish there was a way to show some pride in that transferring, right? And there's something being there to find your fit. And we said it, and it was preached. And when I coached and recruited too, it was you want to pick the school for the fit, right? You want to go on your visit. Does it feel good? Do you like the coach? Do you like the kids already on the team? Take your overnight.
Because you're going to be there for 4 years. You better like the school, right?
Exactly. This is important. Do you like what they're doing after college? Are there good alumni connections in your major, right? We're not just majoring general English, right? And that's hard. Because I don't think that's the mindset anymore, and I don't know how you change that. It has to be done at some kind of grassroots level, and I don't even know who does that. I think there's a weird travel coach mentality with that, and who's going where and who's going D1, and are we even celebrating the student just going and playing in college, or is there a D1 focus, and mom and dad are playing mega bucks for these kids to play on these teams. And I played on travel teams. I grew up in South Jersey. We played New Jersey and Pennsylvania, maybe Maryland once a year. Hard stop. My nephews are traveling across the countries and getting in airplanes to play on their travel teams. And it's crazy. And I don't even want to know what that's costing my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. It's insane. So it's just sad. I think, the culture of youth sports is generally broken, and now we're kind of seeing that carry over in the college space, which is disappointing, but there's still a lot of kids that want to play college sports. There's a lot of opportunities for them. So it's kind of finding the right puzzle pieces, right, for everybody to make sure it can happen.
That's a great point that you raise about like club sports and sort of what kind of kids are being churned out of the club sports world as it is today, and sort of what their mentality is about going to a school, right? Like, we used to joke, oh, it's D1 or bust, right? Like, if you're not going to go D1, you're not going to play. But now it's almost like, well, if I don't like it, I'll just leave, right? Because it wasn't ever a luxury in the past. Like, if you left, you sacrificed a year and you couldn't do anything, right? And so there was a lot at stake, and now there's none at stake because it's become, again, I use the term just transactional. It almost seems that way, right? And I think, sadly, I just think kids are going to lose out on the college experience that I cherished and so many people cherish, that because they're just going to be like, oh, where'd you go to school? Oh, I started out at Catholic, and then I went to Maryland, and then I jumped over to Virginia. Like, what? What is that, right?
It's so base level, but my teammates and I always say, who the heck's going to your wedding?
Yeah.
Right? And that's like, think about that, right? Like, think about, like, who is going to your wedding? Who are your groomsmen? Who are your bridesmaids? Like, you're spending a year or maybe 2 with these people instead of 4? Yeah. That's a huge difference. I'm so close. Point. Right? I'm so close to my teammates, and I'm like, okay, I'm 39. So these are women I've known since I was 18. Yeah. I've now known my college teammates more than half my life. Yeah. We've literally watched each other grow up. Yeah. Getting married and seeing your teammates in, the seats at your wedding is so powerful. And then seeing them get married and have kids and going to the baby showers and going to the birthday parties. And sadly, we're getting to the point where we're going to parents' funerals, and that sucks. But having those people there and that core that have known you for literally ever is so meaningful. And I think that's part of the human connection that we lost during COVID anyway. Very true. And now these these young people are losing it even more because they don't know what it is to make and then maintain those connections for years, and it's sad.
That's actually, like, if you ever wanted to do a study, like, that's the sort of thing, like a psychology study about how kids are not adjusted. Well, like, why? Well, they don't have permanent friends, right? Like, I think that's very very real. All right, because I don't want to kill your day, I have a couple more questions for you.
Awesome.
These are the fun ones. I have 3 of them. First, where do you think Division III is in 3 years?
I think it's still here. I do. I think there's some big conversations happening at NCAA convention this year related to rules, and I think Division III as a whole has to take a hard look in the mirror about who we are and what our priorities are. We just redid our philosophy statement a few years ago. Division III's focus is on the undergraduate experience. It's only been a few years that postgraduate students were able to participate. That's had exceeding impacts on that 5th year, right? And what that means and what that looks like, and even more students now chomping at the bit to try to get that 5th year and what that, looks like for them. So I think there'll be some big decisions made in January that's going to set the future for us. But if you ask me today, Division III will be alive and well in 3 years. I do think House is going to settle some things. President Baker's been really clear about what that means in terms of a 10-year window and some stability, and the Turner contract, right? But I just don't see it breaking off that soon. Do I worry about being able to retire as a Division III commissioner? Yes, certainly. I need my backup job ready to roll just in case, because I don't think it'll look like that 10 years from now. But 3, 5, 6, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, if you had at the snap of a finger, you're able to do the one thing that you think would be needed, necessary to support Division Three, what would that thing be?
Oof.
That's why I get paid the
Oof.
big bucks. That's why I'm the YouTube
Oof.
influencer that I am.
I would take the revenue that Division One gives to Division Two and Division Three and split it down the middle because I don't think it's fair that Division Two gets more money than Division Three, even though they're smaller and sponsor fewer championships than us.
Wow.
So, right, fun fact. So all that Turner money, Division Three gets 3.18% of that, which covers our entire Division Three budget. D2, I think, gets a full percent more. It's just over 4. And they have a lot more money to do things. And I don't think it's fair because Division 3 is the largest division. We have the most student athletes, most schools, most championships.
I tell people that all the time.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should get more than them, but I think that should be more equitable. And I think there's a lot of fat to burn off there at that level. And that's not popular, but I do believe it to my core. And I think some things like our Division III championship experience aren't funded in the way that they should be. And that's no fault of the NCAA, but the money is just not there to do it. Currently, all the money D3 gets, 80% of that goes to Division III championships. And our schools are still paying out of pocket to attend. You know, and that's what stinks, right? Where I don't think that's happening at D2. So I feel like there has to be some kind of wiggle room there. Am I allowed a part two? I have a second one.
Go, part two.
Part two. My second one is more eligibility based. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we do away with all waivers and everyone gets 5 years of eligibility, period, hard stop. If you're enrolled full-time at school, it counts. And if you don't get injured and if you do all the things and you can play 5 years, awesome. But no more waivers. 5 years. If you're healthy and can play.
Uncomplicated.
Right?
Absolutely.
Uncomplicated. Get rid of everything and all the weirdness. I think Division II has a proposal. They're basically proposing that at their convention, at the same convention in January. No more red shirting, no more whatever.
No.
Who cares how you use it? I think it empowers kids that want to do 4+1s or 3-2s. It encourages more education. We're seeing more of that. Master's degrees are becoming more increasingly important and preferred, right, on so many applications. So if we want students to have that experience, great, go for it. Just because I played 4 doesn't mean they can't play 5, right? But I don't know exactly what that looks like, but to your point, I'm uncomplicating that process. The lawyers are cry because we'll take more money out of their pockets, but I think it would be in the best interest of the students, in the best interest of our schools, and just make life a lot easier on folks.
And then that becomes a rule. I would say that becomes a rule because it's uncomplicated. You get 5 years to play.
Do what you want.
Do what you want. Like, oh, you want to sue me because you want sick? No, we just put a line in the sand at 5. Schools are 4-year institutions. What is you like? We give you. I think it becomes a lot more defensible than sort of the amorphous, like you said, red shirt. Why are you red shirting? Well, because I'm not going to play. And like there's it gets used for a whole host of things. So I totally agree. All right, the last one. I love asking this question, and I'm sure you know something here. What do you think we are? What are we not talking about that we should be talking about?
Ooh.
That's a hand grenade in the room right there.
There is a hand grenade in the room right now. I kind of touched on it already, but I do think the impacts that these rule changes are having on incoming high school students. So it's not that we're not talking about it, but I don't think we've spent enough time talking about it. Because I feel like they're going to find alternatives that aren't going to benefit higher ed, whether that's 5th year prep, JUCO, which that is a good decision for some students, so that's not meant as a slight, but I don't think a solution for all that they should be taking because they can't get on a roster at their desired 4-year, right? Like that kind of stinks. I think impact on the students, and I think just spending a little more time on gaining their perspective on some of these things, right? Like we have an engaged SAC. Division III SAC is great, and they get a vote and voice at our convention, but they're the ones really impacted by this. And while we've been through it and can think of other repercussions and impacts on administration and higher ed as a whole, I think gaining and at least understanding their perspective in this process is really important.
Commissioner Boldvich, it is always a pleasure. This was awesome. Oh, I do one last question for you. Is the Palestra on?
We're going back.
Nice.
January 11th.
Nice. All right.
Yep. So year 4 at the Cathedral. We've got 2 men's games, 2 women's games. I can send you the link, but our ADs are officially voting on game times in a couple weeks.
Drama.
So we have the pairings. Don't know the game times quite yet, but we'll be getting an update there soon. So yeah, back to the Palestra and back to Lancaster for our baseball tournament, which is a pretty big deal too.
That I didn't know.
Pretty proud about. Yeah, we were blessed to take over the Stormers Stadium last year, minor league team in Lancaster, and we get to go back this year. So we're pretty excited. Have some other things we're cooking. That I definitely would want to engage you in if they come to fruition next fall.
Yeah.
But always looking to do a new fun thing and kind of create some unique experiences for our students. So plugging away there.
All right. Thank you. All right. That's awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate the time. This is fantastic. And we'll have to do this again after the season, after the soccer season, before the basketball gets into high gear and all that stuff.
Yeah, or after convention, if you want to talk about any of the votes and stuff like that. I'd be happy to do that anytime.
All right. Thank you very much.
Always good to see you, Paul. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.